Hello, I am Megan Hillier, the host of Know Your Ancestors, and I am excited to be back here today. I took a couple weeks off, and it's been hard to come back. I feel like the longer you're away from doing something, the harder it is to start doing it again. But I'm excited to be here to record another podcast today. It is another solo episode. I have not had an interview for a bit, and that's because that takes planning, and I have kind of not been in planning mode lately. I feel like because I've been running the Ancestor Power Project, which is my 8-week program that I've been doing for the first time in these last few weeks. We have 2 more weeks of that. Then I feel like maybe I'll have more brain space to do some planning. But I do have a couple interviews in the works that will hopefully happen in the next month or so. But I have been thinking about something, and I feel like I wanted to just record a little podcast about it because I don't know, it's something I've been thinking about, something I've been seeing a lot of videos about, and I just want to share my 2 cents. So on Instagram, I feel like my algorithm is showing me lots of things about connecting to our ancestors, right? Naturally, that's what I'm talking about and seeking out. And so I've been getting lots of videos about that, about connecting to our roots, connecting to our ancestors, ancestral healing, that sort of thing. And I'm grateful that these conversations are happening and that more people are seeming to be interested in where they come from, connecting to their roots. A lot of that conversation is talking about your ancestors before colonization. So I've been seeing a lot of content about that, connecting to your ancestral culture before colonization, before, I guess, the English came and colonized where your ancestors lived, and Christianity or the religion and everything kind of erased different cultures, erased maybe the communing with the land and traditions and ceremony that related to that. And I've been thinking about that a lot. And I have been thinking about people who are specifically wanting to reconnect with their ancient roots. The last couple weeks ago, I signed up for this program called Radiant Brow with Stella. I don't even remember what her last name is. I found her on Instagram, signed up for this little 9-day program, 10-day program, and it was great. I am really interested in reconnecting with my Welsh heritage. And she lives in Wales, and she was sharing a lot about, the culture, the traditions, the folk tales, and all of that. So, and, land and connection there, which is great. So I'm not saying that is not good, okay? I don't want to have that misconstrued or anything. But I feel like there's a big part of ancestral reconnection that is missing, and that a lot of people are jumping, 200 to 400 years ago, before colonization, before their ancestral culture disappeared, and connecting with that sense of their ancestors. And honestly, it makes me sad because I feel like there's this idea, especially if maybe your ancestors were the colonizers, were the ones that came to North America, that took land from the indigenous people, were the ones that enslaved African people that were brought to North America. I feel like there's this idea that our ancestors are bad, that they did horrible things. We don't want to connect to them because they are not good people. They were not good people. Their spirits are probably not good either. I recently came across this account, the creator Cole, on Instagram, and I'm loving what he's talking about. I don't know if you can't see that. Anyways, one video he talked about was how people are not wanting to connect to their ancestors because they view them as bad or whatever. And he's talking about how, about ancestral healing with those elevated ancestors is the phrase that he used, and that the lives of our ancestors are kind of nuanced. They're not fully good, not fully bad, right? Just like we as humans today are like that as well. Anyways, but even still, he was kind of talking about, more connecting with our older ancestors. But the thing that makes me sad is that people are seeking for that over seeking connection to their close ancestors. And the reason that makes me sad is because who we are is most affected by our close ancestors. Sure, things have been passed down the line, and our ancestors from 500 years ago, parts of them, are passed down. But the ancestors that make up most of who we are, our tendencies, our patterns, are maybe through epigenetics, some of the generational trauma that we've inherited, or the resilience we've inherited, or the patterns, the tendencies, the addictions, the whatever is most affected by our close ancestors. I think we can all agree with that, right? That our parents affect us the most, right? And then our grandparents, great-grandparents. And I think a lot of people just want to skip over that. They just want to go back to their purely cultural, indigenous to whatever land their people come from, ancestors. And I guess I just wanted to talk about that, about how we don't need to skip over our close ancestors, that their lives are important too, and that we can learn from them and we can gain wisdom from them, even if they did horrible things. I shared a post on Instagram that's a lot of people seem to be connecting with, where I talked about my grandma. Now, I talked about this actually on a podcast episode. I think it's called A Nudge from My Grandma or something, where I talked about an interview that someone did with my grandma when she was probably in her 70s, I'm guessing. And she was asked a question, if you had a day all to yourself, what would you do with it? And she said, well, I don't really do that much because my husband doesn't really like me to be gone for long, but I would probably just want to go shopping, not even buy anything, but just go window shopping and go out to lunch with my friends. And I don't think she did that. If she did that, it was very rare. But that was her desire, right? And that she didn't do those things because she knew how it would affect my grandpa. And honestly, it made me sad when I read that, because here was a woman who had sacrificed so much, taking care of her two daughters had many health issues, and then her husband had health issues, and she felt like she just needed to take care of them ahead of herself, which I think anyone who is a mother or who sees that sort of sacrifice understands that it is a desired thing a lot of the time, right? That we are willing to sacrifice some of the things we want in order for something better. But when I read that, it made me think about my own life and about maybe some things that some tendencies I might have inherited from my grandmother that I wanted to just be aware of. That what things am I maybe not doing in fear of the discomfort of my family or people close to me. And so I had been thinking about that and thinking, okay, you know what? There actually are some things that I really want to do that might be hard for my family. But what things matter enough to make that sacrifice? And so when we are looking at the things that happened to our ancestors, I mean, this is a very mild thing, right? She wasn't really harming anyone. She was in many ways being the mother that people expect, right? But looking at our ancestors' lives in these lenses of, yes, I see those experiences, I see those things that they did. What things do I want to continue? Or what things do I want to work to change? What things maybe I see some tendencies that are similar in myself. Do I like that or do I not? If not, let's work to change. Let's work to heal. And I think when we recognize those things, when we see signs of those things, the awareness allows the change to happen more readily. Okay. Now, maybe you have ancestors that did horrible things. Maybe they abused or abandoned or whatever. I don't want to list all of the horrible things that people can do, right? And I think there's some fear that when we look into that it's too painful and that it's too much. And the reality is that for some people, it probably is. And so you might need to tread lightly and have support as you go through that process. But for the majority of us who have ancestors who maybe did some things that we don't agree with, I think we can handle that exploration, and that exploration is necessary to understand our lineage and to understand our family and to understand ourselves better. It also allows us to see the strength and the wisdom from our ancestors and to be able to access that. Like I was saying from this person on Instagram, who was saying like our ancestors were not completely 100% bad, right? And so we can see some of those good things that they might have done and see what life lessons they would have had to learn to endure what they did. Or maybe I think a lot of us, even though we descend from those colonizers, I think a lot of us have very strong and powerful and amazing ancestors whose strength and resilience and tenacity and endurance can help us in our lives today as well. That when we can look at those patterns, when we can look at those things that have happened to our ancestors, it allows us to see their life in a different way, to see maybe some of the things that they did in a different way, and can help us to have more compassion, be less judgmental with those around us, and can help us feel a part of something bigger. So if you are someone who has been curious about your lineage, you've been wanting to maybe connect to your ancient ancestry, or just to connect with your ancestors in a more powerful way, don't skip over your close ancestors. They hold wisdom, they hold strength, they hold life lessons that even if they did things that were maybe not so great, that we can learn from that. That can allow us to see those parts of us that maybe are less than ideal, that we can work through that we can come out on the other side a better person, a better human, a better ancestor. So thanks so much for listening to this bit of a rant today. I love sharing on this podcast some of those longer, maybe ideas or things that I would like to share with someone. I'm glad that there are people here that are listening. If you have been enjoying my podcast, I would love for you to leave a rating or a review, because that is how podcasts can grow. That is how I can see if what I'm sharing is helpful. And I would love to hear from you. If you want to send me an email ever, you can send me an email at hello@knowyourancestors.co. If you have ideas of what you want to hear on the podcast, maybe potential guests, I would love to hear from you. So thanks so much for listening to the episode today, and we will hopefully see you next week.